Hey everyone, this is Yvette Hampton. Welcome back to the Schoolhouse Rocked podcast. I am so glad that you are with us today. It is always such an exciting thing to just know that there's someone else on the other end listening and hopefully being encouraged by this podcast and by the guests that we have on. It is my greatest desire to encourage you in your homeschool journey, whether you have been homeschooling for a really long time or you're just thinking about homeschooling and trying to figure out what this whole home education thing is all about. And so it is always my pleasure to bring exciting guests on the podcast with me. And today is no different. I have a really great homeschool mom. She's a blogger. Her name is Jennifer Elia, and she is the founder of she is the founder of Sound Foundations Homeschool. And she is a homeschool mom. You've been homeschooling for how long? Quite some time, right?
I'm pretty sure this is our 11th year.
Your 11th year. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're in this for a while.
Yes.
So Jennifer, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you. It is an absolute honor to have you on.
Yeah.
Tell us briefly about your family and what you do.
So I have 4 children. My oldest is 15. My youngest is almost 3. So we have like the teens and tots thing going on. And I was originally a public school teacher. I got my master's in teaching. And so my whole thesis was based on how to teach and reach all children so that they can reach their highest potential. And I realized in doing that the schoolroom was not the place to do it. And so that's what started my journey looking at homeschooling. My husband and I actually started researching it before we even married. And then when my oldest, started getting close to school, we kept going back and forth and back and forth. And we finally took the leap and said, we'll just do it for kindergarten. And here we are, 11 years later, still homeschooling.
That is great. I love that you were a teacher in the classroom. You also were a university or a college professor.
Professor.
You taught at a community college?
Community college, yeah.
Okay. Yes. And then you taught, what did you tell me? French, Spanish?
I taught French at the college for 12 years. And I also, when I was in public school, I was in public school for 5 years. I did a mixture of French and Spanish, but then I also did the math and reading resource room. So I worked with students who had special needs, which was part of what drove my my study for my master's, like learning how to really help them. And that's where I realized that these children are being labeled by what they can't do. And we're in the system, we're not focusing on their great gifts and giving them the tools to really shine, because they were special, just as special as the kids that were at the top of the class. They just weren't getting the opportunity to show everybody that.
Yeah. Which is one of the great benefits of homeschooling is that we get to focus on the gifts that God has given to each one of our children and to us as well as moms, because each mom is gifted in a specific way. And so we get to teach our children according to the gifts that God's given us as well.
Yes.
That's a huge blessing. So I want to talk about a few things with you today, because you kind of have a wealth of knowledge and information and experience with homeschooling. And one of the things that you talk about a lot on your blog and that you've spoken on is Homeschool Overwhelm and just eliminating that overwhelm in moms. So let's talk about that, because that is something that I know every mom experiences. It does not matter how long you've been homeschooling, whether you've been homeschooling 5 minutes or 5 years or 15 years. We all get to that point where we are completely just overwhelmed, because homeschooling is not just sitting down, doing curriculum with our kids and a few activities and then it's done. It's life. It's everything around us. It's the academics. It's the care for our homes. It's the care for our families. It's any activities we have outside of that. And it can become very overwhelming to where it becomes almost burdensome sometimes. And so let's talk about that.
Okay. So when I was leading up to starting to homeschool, I'm a researcher, so I read everything I could get my hands on about homeschooling. And I remember in one of the books I read, it said, don't make any decisions in February. It was talking all about how February is like this really hard month and you want to quit. And I kept thinking as I'm reading this, now I hadn't homeschooled yet, but I had taught for several years. Like, this woman obviously just didn't have her act together. Like, if she just planned better. And then we hit our first February, and it was so overwhelming. And we were halfway through a year and things weren't going as I had planned. You know, it wasn't the same as being in the classroom. I figured I have this classroom experience, I have a master's, I have all these material, like this is going to work. And the longer I went into it, the more I realized that it's not about school. Like it's not school at home.
Right.
It really is a lifestyle, and trying to compartmentalize the school within your life and within your home was just completely overwhelming, because while you're doing math, there's still laundry piling up and there's dishes and there's phone calls and there's dust bunnies, and you know, you need to try to find a way to balance all of that. And I was trying to just, you know, this is school, and when school is over, then I'll be, you know, like the housewife and the mom and whatever. And it just wasn't working. So I realized very quickly that I needed to find a way to make this work. And I've realized that one of the problems is that we've all grown up with a school mentality. Like that's what we know. We know going to school, we know sitting in a desk. We know like going through marking periods and having homework. And then when we come home, all of us want to escape the school in some way, but we don't know how to do it. Like we don't know how to have our children at home, because in society, they've always gotten on that bus. Well, they haven't always, but like in our recollection, in our, you know, what our family has passed on to us, that's what's happened. And so we need to kind of step back and reorganize our priorities and learn how to live together and learn while we're living, or it does get completely overwhelming, because the laundry and the dishes, no matter how organized, and I've tried like every system there is, no matter how organized you are, it's going to be there. And the fact of the matter is that you have children in your house, like living and working and playing there all day long. It's never going to look like Better Homes and Gardens. And I think that that is one thing that people get caught up in, because I know before I was a blogger, I loved reading blogs, and that's how I got into it. And often on blogs, we put, you know, this fantastical version of our life out there. And so then you think, well, I need to do it like her. And I need, you know, if I could just buy this curriculum, get this schedule, you know, whatever it is, pray this many times a day, then my life will all fall into place. And what I know now, like being on the other side of the blogosphere, is that most of that is marketing. There are some people that are extremely put together, and they manage to keep their house beautiful all the time. But the reality is that that is very stressful. And so eliminating overwhelm is really accepting like your own humanly limitations and relying on grace a lot, that what you're giving your children is enough. And if your house isn't perfect, it's okay, because you really need to weigh what your priorities are within your family and within your homeschool. You can't do everything. You just need to find a balance.
Yeah. Let's take a really quick break.
Okay.
And then we will come back, because I want to talk a little bit more about this.
Okay.